Hello friends, today's lecture is on poetry, its definition, origin and types. I am Dr. Snehal Prabhune and I will be presenting before you this audio lecture. So let us start. Poetry is loved by all of us and it is one of the oldest forms of literature. It pleases everyone and as we know, there are two basic functions of poetry, pleasing and teaching. But more important is pleasing. Teaching comes afterwards. So let us see the definition of poetry, its origin, and the types. Writing that formulates a concentrated, imaginative awareness of experience in language chosen and arranged to create a specific emotional response through meaning, sound, and rhythm. This is the definition of poetry given in the Webster's Dictionary. If you see closely, you will find that it emphasizes the use of language in a particular way, which is different from prose. The thrust is on the emotional response, and this response is brought about through the meaning, sound, and rhythm. The most important things that differentiate poetry from prose are sound and rhythm, and it is an expression of human experience, especially of emotions. Another definition given by Britannica.com reads, poetry is literature that evokes a concentrated imaginative awareness of experience or a special emotional response through language chosen and arranged for its meaning, sound, and rhythm. Again, if you see, the emphasis here is concentrated imaginative awareness. So if you see, another difference between prose and poetry becomes evident here, and that is poetry is a concentrated expression. It is short, it is brief as compared to prose. So this is one more special feature of poetry. Then we find some other definitions of poetry. It's an arrangement of words or spoken, traditionally rhythmical composition, sometimes rhymed, expressing experiences, ideas, or emotions in a style more concentrated, imaginative, powerful than ordinary speech or prose. Some are in meter, some are in free verse. This is a definition given in the Collins Dictionary. If you read this carefully, you will find that poetry is meant to be spoken or sung. It is a traditional form of literature which emphasizes its rhythmical structure. Most of the times it is rhymed. Rhyming meaning the ends are similar in sound, and this gives them a specific singing ability. It expresses experiences, ideas, or emotions. See, this is a wider view of poetry. Earlier, we saw that it only emphasized emotions. Now, here experiences and ideas are also included in the subject matter of poetry. Again, regarding the style, we are told that it is concentrated, means it is brief, expressed in fewer words, and it is imaginative. So, the use of imagination is emphasized in this definition, and it is powerful than ordinary speech or prose. Ordinary prose is less effective, less powerful. Now, some of the causes of the emphasis are given here: meter or free verse. Meter gives a part of the emphasis to the poetry, and sometimes it is in free verse, means it is not rhymed, but it still has a rhythm of its own. Further, we also find that many poets have also defined poetry on the basis of their practice and beliefs in the past. They represent the various schools of poetry, like the classical school, the neoclassical school, the romantic school, the modern school, the Victorian school, so on and so forth. One good example here is by William Wordsworth. He says, all good poetry is a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. Now, William Wordsworth is one of the most important poets of the 19th century, that is late 18th century and 19th century, and is considered to be the father of romantic poetry. So his poetry or his definition of poetry emphasizes the spontaneity of poetry. Spontaneity means deeply felt inner emotions, an expression of these emotions, powerful emotions. The flow of emotions is expressed in his definition. Next, we come to the origin of poetry. Poetry, the word poetry, is derived from the Greek verb poesis, meaning to make, and the Latin word poeta, which equally means the same. Poetry is the oldest form of literature. It has origin in rituals in prehistoric agricultural societies. So people used to sing while working in the fields to make their work simple, to make their efforts less painful. So the work in the fields was accompanied by music, singing. The aim was it was expected to work like magical spell for good harvest. In the absence of science or in the absence of the development of logic and knowledge, we find that people used singing while working. This made their work feel pleasant and it was a good work done. It helped them ultimately in getting good harvest. So they related it with the music and considered music or poetry to be a magical spell helping them to get good harvest. It exists from prehistoric times in Africa, Eurasia, from about 4,000 years. So, it is obviously the oldest form of literature. Earliest poetry existed about 4,000 years ago. Today, poetry is read and enjoyed for its effect on the human spirit and the mind. So, today it is not meant as a ritual in the fields because farming is getting more mechanized, but it is used for the effect on the mind to please our minds, our emotions, our mood. Now, poetry is of different types. It is classified by many people according to their views. The most on the first formal attempt and the most consistent is that by Aristotle, who defined poetry's function and poetry's nature in his seminal work, Poetics. Aristotle classified poetry into three types: epic, dramatic, and lyric. The dramatic poetry was further classified into tragedy and comedy. Epic poetry is very long. It is in the form of rhymed poetry, or it may be even in the blank verse, but it speaks about the story and the adventures of some national hero. It is meant to set an example for the younger generation, speaking about the history and the work of some national hero, taking pride in the national hero. Lyric poetry is the poetry which is in the form of small poems, brief poems, given or written on the occasion, some smaller occasion, expressing feelings, thoughts, or imaginative ideas. Dramatic poetry, meaning drama. In the earlier times, dramas were written in verse, and so it was classified under poetry. It was of two types, tragedy and comedy. These are the major forms of drama, tragedy and comedy. Tragedy is a drama that ends on a sad note, and comedy is a drama that ends on a happy note. These are further classified into many newer forms, shorter forms, or different forms depending upon the function and their nature. So, epic poetry also differs from the other two in the medium that it uses. Epic poetry is in the form of narration. Narration is telling a story. It is the story of a national hero in poetry. So, epic poetry is naturally very long and very effective, using very high flown style because it tells the story of some national hero. Then we have drama. Drama is in the form of action. It is performed before us on the stage by the actors. They present before us certain incidents in the life of the hero or the protagonist. Thirdly, poetry is classified by the Greeks as song, and there are different types of songs. Lyric or melic poetry, as according to the classification of the Greeks, lyric or melic poetry is the expression of personal emotion sung to the accompaniment of lyre. This is the basic primary definition of the lyric. Lyric poem is an expression of a personal emotion, a single emotion, and hence it is very small. Usually it was sung to the accompaniment of a musical instrument called lyre, but later on it became to be termed as any short poem discussing a single emotion, idea, or a thought. And another one is choric. Choric, the word comes from chorus, which represented a strong communal feeling. Means it was meant for choral or group singing, supplemented by instrumental harmony and accompanied with appropriate dance movements. In the past, choric poetry was a part of religious rituals. Songs sung by groups of singers in the church or religious places during the religious rituals. Further, we find that later on, all poetry not covered under epic and drama and their allied forms began to be classified under lyrics. The poems that are prescribed for the study at BA3 English poetry paper by Shivaji University are basically lyrics. It is that the paper is titled English Poetry. Now, the distinction between prose and poetry. We have seen the origin and definition and types of poetry. Let us distinguish it from prose. Prose is used in most everyday writing, whereas poetry is used to express something special in an artistic manner. Language of prose is plain, straightforward, without embellishment, that is decoration. But language of poetry is expressive. It uses images, symbols, and devices like rhyme, alliteration, etc. Sounds, feelings are effectively communicated through poetry. Ideas are conveyed in sentences, grammatical in structure, and arranged into paragraphs in prose, whereas ideas are contained in lines, may or may not be rhymed. Thank you.